Thank you very much, and let me welcome all of you. It's my privilege to welcome all of you to this session. I hope I still have 75 minutes from now for the session, and we intend to stick to that time. So I will implore my panel members to keep their comments and answers brief and straight to the point so that we can get in as many as possible. If we have enough time at the end, then we could take a few comments and questions from the floor as well. So I'll now proceed to introduce my panel, and you can clap for them when I finish introducing all of them so that we can save a bit of time. Mammadou Kane is the Deputy Permanent Secretary at CosPetrogaz, the agency charged with leading, coordinating, and monitoring the development of oil and gas projects in Senegal. Mammadou, if you can please take your seat. Thank you very much. I also have Josephine Mahendran. I hope I got the name right. Is Associate Vice President and Regional Director, Sub-Saharan Africa of Black & Veatch, a global engineering, procurement, and construction leader. That's Joseph. Dr. Mónica M. Bennett is a Senior International Client Development Manager of the International Corporate Training and Client Development at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, Calgary, Canada. Mónica, thank you very much for joining us. We're expecting to have two other people on the online. Kwaku Boateng unfortunately had a challenge with his flight. He's currently locked up in Johannesburg, so he'll be joining us online. He is the Director of Local Content at Ghana's upstream petroleum regulator, the Petroleum Commission. He is responsible for the implementation of his country's accelerated capacity development program in oil and gas sector. And another person joining us online, hopefully, will be Mr. Kwame Acquah, who is the Managing Director of the firm called Research Development and Financial Consultants, aka RDFC Holdings. He is referred to as a go-to man for local content in Ghana, and we have a shared affinity, myself and him, for single malt whiskeys and high life music. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are my panel members. You can now clap for them. Okay, so we'll start straight away. We will not waste much time. Let's look. The topic basically is maximizing the development of local content and capacity building to improve ROI and social justice. And maybe I'll start with Mammadou. Yes, Mammadou.
Thank you.
So virtually every country, especially the new ones, have come up with local content. And as you read a lot of the designations, some have national content, others have local content. Sometimes I'm thinking, is there a difference in understanding of what we are trying to achieve here? Local content. In Ghana, we have something called local content, which means that it's not just replacing maybe foreign jobs with Ghanaians, but jobs with Ghanaians from a particular locality. So it's local content. So if it's in the Western region where oil is found, then the people from the Western region's understanding of local content is that the jobs should be for those of them from the Western region, not Ghanaians. So you don't just replace foreigners with Ghanaians, but you replace them with Ghanaians from the Western region. Okay. So that's local content. So the question then is, are local content laws and regulations still beneficial? Because people have still, especially the locals, the local people, keep asking, how are we benefiting from the oil and gas? So the regulations are there, but are the benefits real? So maybe Mammadou will share his thoughts in terms of what is happening in Senegal and maybe what you've learned across your experiences. Okay, Jesse, okay. So we thank God Jacinto is also here. So our next panel member, let me introduce. Equatorial Guinea is represented on this panel by the Director of National Content at the Ministry of Mines and Hydrocarbons, Mr. Jacinto Nguema Owono, who is a former employee of Health Corporation and the Equatorial Guinea National Electric Power Company. Jacinto, thanks for coming. How did I miss him? Thank you very much. So maybe let's go back to Mammadou. your thoughts on this.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here to share this panel with these outstanding colleagues. Well, Senegal, we are very lucky to find our oil and gas after the others. So meaning that we can learn from the others for their achievement, their good achievement, or their mistakes. So when we start to develop our oil and gas resources since the discoveries between 2014 and 2017, we conduct some benchmarking tour in countries that develop their resources since a very long time. So we did a lot of countries in Africa, in Europe, to try to understand how they develop their local capabilities. As from there, we try to stress test their models, see what worked in Ghana, in Nigeria, what could have been improved there, what worked in Trinidad and Tobago, how Norway established a value chain of local capabilities, creating synergy in other industries, in other sectors, and we came up at some very important findings. For example, in many African countries, they're talking about local content, where they just have the framework, a nationality of framework, and they import all the goods and services. And that creates sometimes an aristocracy that win business because sometimes they are very close to the decision makers. So we try to put in place in Senegal a framework that will enhance competition, because with competition, it will be more fair to create a natural selection of enterprise that are more capable. So we did not, for instance, force the local content like you can see it in many African countries. We say, okay, we're gonna do an need assessment and an audit capabilities, see what exists on the ground, because sometimes you have some capabilities from other sectors on which you can capitalize. And from there, the first thing we had done is to identify all the nodes, and also to see from what you can build. When we say local content, first of all, we're talking about capabilities, meaning that people must be trained very well. So we create the National Institute for Oil and Gas in December 2016. So we established a lot of partnership, among them Mónica, Bennett is representing Zeitz, which is a partner, I think, of INPG. And from there, we talk with the operators like BP and the others to tell them, you conduct the need assessments, you tell us in short term, medium, and long term, the profile of people that you will need. So we ask them to put the money for their training, and they are trained with regards of their needs, and that it will be them, BP Woodside and Technip and the others, the tier 1 contractors, that will recruit them. Donc, first thing. Second thing, after we had the findings of the classification of activities, we divide them in 3 categories. The first is the exclusive one, meaning that the Senegalese entrepreneur must have 51% at the stake and a minimum level of of Senegalese workers. For example, 80% in those categories of activity, we saw that the capabilities exist. And the second is semi-exclusive or mixed, where we say to the local enterprise to go and find JV in where activities we think that being with them in a short or mid term with the transfer of competencies and technology, they can take over. The other activities which are non-obligatory, like non-exclusive, we consider that if you want to implement that local content, you're gonna increase the cost. Our first motto in Senegalese local content is not to have it to increase the operating costs, because we saw in other countries the costs skyrocketed. So
just because you want to achieve local content.
Yes, yes, and just to respond to your question about local contents, of course the expectations are high from the area where the resources are exploited. We have the same pressure, but we try to explain to those people that the resources will benefit all the nation through financing in projects that will have a strong economic and social benefit, which is not related to the ERHC of the company.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me come to you, Jacinto, maybe before I come to Joseph. Jacinto, from Equatorial Guinea, I'm sure you have been a bit more, you've been doing oil and gas for some time. Once again, the question is, would you say for sure that local content regulations have benefited the local people? And what is their understanding of what local content is? The average person on the streets of Equatorial Guinea, where the oil is found, have they benefited?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thanks a lot for allowing me to speak. Before I jump to your question and answer that, I would like to take a minute and thank the organizer for making that happen, because it's been a big challenge, so we must acknowledge that. Going to your question is, first of all, we in Equatorial Guinea, we take local content very seriously. So it's in the topic of every conversation that we have with the producers is as important as safety. So this is the level of seriousness that we take the local content. And above that, we also think that local content is not a charity. Local content is something that it must be done. It's something that is a good win-win situation for both the companies and the host countries. So far, what we have been has been done in Equatorial Guinea is very good. We also must acknowledge that local content is two-way street. So it's not only looking for what the company can do. We also, as a host government, we also need to look what we can do and what our strengths and weaknesses are. What Equatorial Guinea did from the beginning is we put same as our junior brother Senegal here. I said junior because we started a little bit earlier than you. So what we did, we call ExxonMobil was ExxonMobil a marathon. They were very driver on that. We sat and we asked, where are we? We make an assessment, what we want to be in 5 years, and what can we do? The first thing that we did is we put an Institute of Technology. This is this institute is the one is helping the industry train the youth of the Equatorial Guinea that they want to work in oil and gas. Today, in our platform, we have about 75% of the employees working on that are national. This has been because the joint effort between the oil company and the local and the government of Equatorial Guinea, leading by the Minister of Mines and Hydrocarbons. This has been a success. So we also, recently we had, we have to remember that local content has two pillars, which is the one is training. This is one that take care of, that create jobs for nationals. And the other one is, which is very important as well, is the one that create opportunity for entrepreneurs. We will remember that the entrepreneurs are the one that create jobs for those that they cannot have the opportunity to go to school. So this is a pillar that we think that is very important. What we lack back in the day, we didn't have companies very well organized that they are with the discipline and the knowledge to work with the service with the majors. This was a big lab. So what we did, we sat again with the major. We told them, what can we do? We listened to them. They told us, we really want to work with the local companies, but we do not know where to find them. We want to work with them. Most of the time we call them, we don't know where to find them. We say, okay, we have listened, we will go back. What we did, we went back, and then we called the national that they are entrepreneur. We tell them there's an opportunity here to work with the ORC and the producer, but you must play by the rules. The industry has rules. And we want to teach you who those rules are and how to work with them. So we held a lot of seminars. We teach them. We call some of the major. They were also big players on that. We put at the end. We end up putting a platform that we call NASCO. NASCO is national companies, indigenous companies that they want to work and serve in the oil and gas. So we give them everything that we need. We gave them everything that was a requirement for the majors, for them to have a relationship with them. Now they have a website. They have from now, the major doesn't have to go to the neighbor and look where they are. There's a platform that has all the companies that they categorize them with a service. So if a major wants an engineer company, he just needs to go in his computer, by click, enter to the NASCO website, and then he will see all the companies they are. And then from there, catering is the same. All the companies are there. But the challenges is that, those are the entities. So you can make as many policy as you want, but they need to be reinforced. And for that to be, is not you cannot take a hammer and say you must do this. Definitely. It has to be willingness. So it has to be both sides. Yeah. We have see a situation that there are opportunity that national company or national opposition he can do even better than an expatriate, but because the personal affiliation or the ex-person worked in the past with ex-manager, he want to bring him. Yeah. So that's very normal. Let's face it. So for local content to work, it has to be. The way to do that is not to take a hammer and say you must do this. It has to be a willingness from both sides. The local, the host company. The host country, and the company.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Jacinto. But let me go to Kwaku Boateng, who is online. Kwaku is in charge of local content at Ghana's upstream petroleum regulator. So Kwaku, if you can hear us, Jacinto said about 75% of the workers on the platform in Equatorial Guinea are currently nationals. What is the experience in Ghana? What is is Ghana getting to that same level in terms of ensuring that majority of the work is done by Ghanaians and that they have received the requisite training? Because nobody wants to hand over an FPSO to an indigene just because he's an indigene. He wants to hand it over to a qualified indigene. So what is the experience with Ghana, if you want to share that with us?
Hello, Kwame.
Yeah, I can hear you, Kwaku.
Good morning, everyone. My apologies for not being able to join you physically. I missed my flight and I'm stuck up in Johannesburg. But all the same, through technology, I'll be able to join you. And my greetings to my fellow panelists and the audience as well. Concerning the Ghana's experience, Ghana local content is taken very seriously as article of faith in Ghana oil and gas industry. Right after the discovery of oil and gas in 2007, the country took steps to ensure that we indigenize the emerging oil and gas industry. Over a century experience in producing solid minerals, meaning coal, where we achieved little bit of local content. The country decided that we have to change the narrative, oil and gas. So immediately after the discovery of oil and gas, as I said, the government in 2010 put in place a local content policy. And the policy outlined the vision of government in respect of maximizing in-country value addition, employment of Ghanaians, and enhancement of goods and services that are supplied by Ghanaian companies. Now, going back directly to your question, in terms of achievement, our local content policy have two main wings. We have the local content itself, which is the supply chain, participation of Ghanaian companies in the delivery of goods and services along the oil and gas value chain. And we also have the Ghanaian participation, which is the employment and training of Ghanaians. Now, in terms of goods and services, between 2014, when the local content law became effective, and 2020, when we have the validated data, about 2.2 worth of contract has been directly awarded to indigenous Ghanaian companies. And when you look at the size of our economy and the multiplier effect of this amount of contract to Ghanaian companies, it's quite significant. On the employment side, where you look at the percentage localization, the overall localization now is well over 85%. When you look at the total workforce of Ghanaians in the oil and gas industry as a percentage of the total workforce in the industry. However, this figure may be misleading to determine the actual level of local content. Misleading in the sense that, one, when you look at most of the Ghanaian staff, employees, are in the middle level to lower level to middle level technical skills. In terms of the core technical skills and managerial skills, there's a significant number of expatriates still in those areas. However, I have to say that for the past few years, we have achieved a success in the sense that you mentioned FPSO. Currently, the FPSO, some of the leading or top positions in the FPSO are occupied by Ghanaians. You talk about the OIM, Offshore Installation Manager, which is the highest technical position in the FPSO. Two of our FPSOs, we have Ghanaians being trained to acquire those positions. We have Ghanaians acting as production superintendents, and we have Ghanaians as officer in charge, at least one of the FPSOs. And these things are happening within quite a short period of time as a result of aggressive localization and training of Ghanaians. And I heard my friend from at the Equatorial Guinea making a very interesting point that local content can only be achieved through the willingness of the host government and also the companies. To the extent it's true, but from our experience, not only in oil and gas, but also in the solid mineral sector, if the companies are also not pushed by enforcement of law, the pace towards localization, local content, will be much longer. So the willingness of the company is very key to enhance local participation. But we also need the enforcement of law to send a clear message to the company that the state will not allow the benefit of the oil and gas industry to be accrued to only the foreigners. It has to be a fair balance. And I believe that the enforcement of the law and the local content policy backed by the law is very key in Ghana's case in achieving the success you have made so far.
Okay, thank you, Kwaku. I think basically from the three panelists so far, I get a feeling that there is some drive towards achieving the objectives of local content from these are the regulators, the politicians, and the policymakers. So I'm getting comfortable that it looks like we are getting there. However, I still believe that there must be some implementation challenges that can be overcome. So let me come to you, Joseph. You come from the private sector. What, in your view, are the key things inhibiting the ability of the local, the host countries to benefit fully from local content regulations that they themselves set up? What, in your mind, from your point of view, is still missing that you can share with us?
Before I go into the missing part, I'll talk about the generic and then I'll jump into that, if you can afford me that opportunity. So, yeah, I think local content requirements have always been there. I'm talking about for ages, right? I think in the Far East, they used to kind of call it the Bhumi Putras. In the Middle East, we used to call it the sons of the soil. I think this requirement has not been something that's been just introduced, right, in the workforce. So that has always remained. And for us, as companies, wherever we go operate, as Black & Veatch, when we go operate anywhere, one of the primary things that we have done, we are doing, and we'll continue to do, is to kind of make sure that the workforce is upskilled. Okay. So one of the key things that we have looked at, not just in Africa, like I said, globally, is skills and knowledge transfer. Wherever we go, we kind of make sure that there are the local workforce is skilled to an extent where if we leave, they need to be able to take this up and run it. So that's the first thing. And the regulations that have helped us a lot from that standpoint is not defining the local content very strongly, not being very prescriptive. That's a good thing, only because if they were very prescriptive, we'll just do that and nothing more. Okay, the fact that they have loosely left it and said, okay, local content requirements need to be met, we are able to go over and beyond what the requirements are. And that, to me, I think is one very key important part from our standpoint, because we are able to bring in a number of things that we would have not done had there been stricter requirements. But the fact that we've learned from different places, we're able to kind of instill and get these guys going. Just to give some numbers, over 300 to 400 people, we've trained them locally here in South Africa. And we used to, at one point, when we came here to work on stuff, we used to have expats, literally, close to about 250 expats at one point in time, working and trying to make sure that the projects are managed right. Now we are operating with just four. Okay. And the stuff is not because the work has dwindled, but because the people that had to be trained have been trained, and they are running the show. And they have the qualities. Yes, they have, and that's right. So in certain places, not necessarily here, there have been, whenever we try to implement something, the thing is, why are you coming and doing over and beyond what you're doing? One of the primary things I want to kind of highlight here is you don't know what you don't know. That's the unconscious incompetence. And if there are people who kind of know and who come and kind of are insisting that it be done in a certain way, the thing is to kind of wait, learn, listen, and kind of grow, right? And I think both of them kind of highlighted the point that there is a give and a take, okay? And there is the recipient and the giver. And if the recipient is not ready, the giver can't give. And even if it's given, it can't be accepted. So there are various things at play here. So my point is local content requirements are a must. The goods and services, even if they are not being made available right now in a certain country, over a period of time that it needs to be phased out. Okay, so regulations play a very important part, but strict regulations may kind of hamper it from going where it needs to, and keeping it loosely defined is much better. But so what I'm hearing is that from a private sector point of view, you feel that a company focusing on ensuring that local content targets are achieved benefits. It's not just, it's not CSR, it's not a hindrance, but the company itself also benefits. Correct. And that's what I'm picking from you. Absolutely, right? Yes, that is correct. Let me then move on to Mónica. Mónica, let's look at the capacity building bit. So what is still left? How do we train the next generation of African energy workforce? We are in the energy transition. So if we are in oil and gas and we are going to move, it means there are people who have still not learned the oil and gas, and they are now being asked to add new technology, isn't it? So how do we build the capacity whilst we are in transition?
if you wanted to take it from that angle, I'll be grateful.
Sure. I think it's important to acknowledge that, yes, there is an evolution in energy, but we have to be cognizant. There's new technologies, there's new processes that need to be embedded in the curriculum where you're teaching. So you still have to teach the old ways because it's going to take a very long time. I think what is critical is knowing the new technologies and embedding them in the curriculum. And also, I speak more from education perspective, is the importance of having technicians at the technician levels and having institutions that work very closely with industry. So you have to have industry at the table, you have to have the ministry, like we've worked closely in Equatorial Guinea with the ministry there to provide the capacity of the development. It's to identify the skills that are required, and then keeping in mind that things are evolving, but you're still gonna have to teach the old ways. It's gonna take time. But it's very crucial. I see that one of the biggest mistakes I see in training is the lack of involvement of industry. So industry needs to be at the table. There needs to be discussions about what skills are required. And also, when you're teaching at the technician level, you need to have the appropriate equipment. That way, individuals that train at the training centers are able to come and then generate an income right away. So you train operators at the schools with the equipment, but then when they're out, so it's a different model than the university model. And that's what I think it's a key important message is the technician level.
Okay. Maybe, Mammadou, would you want to add a bit to that? I mean, the next generation of African workforce transition still, so Senegal, you're still learning. You are young, you're learning the old methods. At the same time, transition comes in, and all of a sudden, it looks like a double work, isn't it?
Oh, well, I think she's right. Of the needs of having the industries evolve because they are the main driver of the evolution in the industry, and also they are more keen to transfer all the disruptive ongoing technology on the way. That's why when we were putting in place the INPG, we asked the industry to do the need assessment, to define the curricula, and ask them how many people do you need at technician levels, at engineer levels, and it's from that we built the National Institute of Oil and Gas, and we asked them how many money, how much money are you willing to put on the table? For example, BP committed $20 million, where Woodside and Cosmos committed $10 million, and the government of Senegal complete the rest.
Right.
So you have also to train your administration because the people in administration need to understand the industry, how it works. For example, the tax administration, they cannot treat the oil and gas companies like the companies in other sectors. Because the taxation is really specific and the economics of the perspective are very different. You need to understand how it works. If not, there will always be a clash between the tax administration and the oil and gas industry. But by saying that, we don't think that it will be a double work. Looking at the changing in the industry, we rather put in place institutions and tools that are agile. Because we are in the world where you must not be rigid to change, and you have to train people, manage people in the way that they won't be left behind in technology shift. That's why also we are really encouraging at the state level, how you call it, meaning the continuous education, meaning that at each level they need to update themselves, but also look at the other opportunities. For example, we're talking a lot about green energy, green hydrogen. We know that North Africa or certain parts of West Africa, meaning the north of Senegal until Mauritania and Morocco, they have a huge potential of producing green hydrogen, like in South Africa as well. So I think the governments must to anticipate all those coming changing by adapting their training to those new future energy and position themselves as exporters now. And we can do that work with the oil and gas companies because they are leading those change. They are already in there, but we must to offer them our competitive advantage to show them we're part of that transition. The transition will come. You cannot, it's better that you go in the way of changing by resisting the change. If not, you will be left behind. And our role is to make sure that the country and the skills evolve in the way it needs to be done.
Thank you, Kwaku. Let me come back to you. Mammadou raised an interesting observation about determining what the skill gap is. I mean, before you even think about local capacity development. To what extent did that influence Ghana's accelerated capacity development program in terms of determining what skill set is lacking and that needs to be developed? I have an economics background, so I listen to them talk about technology, and it looks like all the training is technology. But those of us from the economics background will say that nobody brings the oil from the ground just to drink. You need to create, you are just trying to, you take the oil to make money. So if the people selling the crude don't even understand the tax regimes and all, if you don't train people to also manage that side of the equation, then the technicians can bring the oil all right, but the value they get will be minimal. So to what extent do these considerations influence what kind of training that Ghana does in terms of the accelerated capacity development program? Kwaku.
Okay, Kwame. As said by Mammadou, the capacity assessment is very key in determining the skill gap and the kind of training you need to provide to facilitate local content. In Ghana, when you started your local content implementation, I have to admit that initially we got it somehow wrong. I won't say wrong, but you put much emphasis in training engineers, geoscientists mainly, and I was thinking that these are the skills that are needed by the industry. So a lot of people were trained in these areas.
MSc in petroleum engineering.
At the high level, petroleum engineering, geoscientists, geologists were trained. Many people were trained in Ghana and mainly in overseas. However, over the years, we found out that the critical job skills required in the industry are the middle level position in welding, fabrication technicians, pipe fitters, instrumentation technicians, NDT specialists. These middle level positions occupy greater percentage of jobs that is generated in the industry. So while a lot of emphasis was put on the higher level graduates at the master's level, we found that most of the people that we trained were not struggling to even get jobs in the oil and gas industry. At the same time, a lot of experts were coming in to work in the middle level positions, as I mentioned, that are critical to the industry. On that basis, that we decided that no, there's a need to accelerate training and capacity of Ghanaians in those middle level positions. And that formed the base for accelerated oil and gas capacity building project. And now what we are focusing mainly in Ghana is to make sure that we enhance training of Ghanaians in this middle level position. And the new dimension of the AOGC project is that instead of sending people to be trained overseas, we are localizing this training in Ghana. We understand that the oil and gas industry, there are basic standards and certifications that are universal, and you cannot localize them. What we are doing is that a lot of Ghanaians are being sent to overseas training institutions such as NATE in Canada and Aberdeen, where they will come as trainer of trainees. We are now in the process of building our own boarding center that will meet the international standards. We have established Ghana Welding Bureau, which has been admitted by AEW, International Institute of Welding, who is supervising the construction of the state-of-the-art welding center in Ghana. That will train welders and pipe fitters and NDT specialists at the level that meet the international standards. So the base of AOGC is make sure that we, within a short possible period of time, we train these technicians and specialists that are required by the industry, so that we minimize the reliance on expatriates. Okay. And that position is really very much in need, especially when you have the restriction imposed by the public and the movement of expatriate workers were constrained. Then you realize that you need to accelerate training of Ghanaians. So on that basis, so the big reason for AOGC program is to, one, you move away from the master's, MSc, MA training in petroleum engineering, geoscientists to middle level positions. On the petro business side, we also realize that that's one area that we have for the years, training tax experts in petroleum accounting, people who also check the areas such as transfer pricing. But we found out that there are a lot of revenue leaking out of the country due to the accounting and tax practices by most of these oil and gas companies. And now, so the Petroleum Commission, in conjunction with the Ghana Revenue Authority, is now putting emphasis on training many people in the petrol business area, particularly in tax, finance, and accounting-related area. Okay. To ensure that you minimize revenue flight of the country.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the point is well made. I mean, we need to determine what we are looking for, otherwise you miss the training requirements. Let me come to you, Jacinto. If every country focuses on local content, I mean, so everybody, so you have Equatorial Guinean content, Senegalese content, Ghana content, Mozambican content. So then what role does AFTA play in this? So we are looking at regional trade integration. Should we now start thinking about African content, or we can, or regional, maybe sub-regional content? What are your thoughts around that? If every country pursues its local content policies and is successful, then what happens to regional content? What happens to African content? And especially when African is being asked to find a common voice at the time of the energy transition. What are your thoughts on that, Jacinto?
That is a very good question.
I planned to make it, yeah. I actually planned it to make it good. It's a tough one, I know, but I know you're able to handle that.
That is very good. That's good. Listen, you know, before you go out to clean somebody else's house, you need to clean your house first. Okay. Mm-hmm. So
an African can never speak without adding one proverb or the other. So we need to.
So before we go and help others, you need to help yourself first. Yeah. We need to put your act together, know what you want, and what you do a fairly assessment for yourself. Mm-hmm. So what we done in Equatorial Guinea is what I already explained. So we also looked at, we found out that we have gaps, and those gaps that they cannot be filled in country. So what the law, our regulation says is that if an operator look for X services, he first must look in the Equatorial Guinea. If there is not, we allow him to go in the CIMAC area.
Okay.
And after the CIMAC area, he extend that to the entire Africa. So the last thing he will do, the last place he will look is in Europe, America, or Aberdeen. Okay. So
there are 4 stages.
There are stages that
Equatorial Guinea
will look.
The regional bloc, Africa, before the rest of the world.
Exactly. Right now, there's a process in the ministry, and I look after this process. If there's a need for her, there's a vacancy, let's say. The X company will tell me, we need this. My job, my role is to let him first look in Equatorial Guinea. If there is not, and then he needs to justify that, I have been looking, I cannot find that person with those qualifications, then we allow him to go to the sub-region. And then when he finds a person, he must put something in place, a succession plan in place. He say, I have brought that person. In order for, that person is coming, there's a national that I'm going to put him as a secondee, that he will train. And by the way, this training will take 2, 3, 5 years. How long it takes? What we need is a plan.
Yes.
It must be a plan, a succession plan. So to answer your question, we know that there's a lot of opportunity in the oil and gas industry. The pipe, the cake is very big. Everybody has a piece of it. And we know that we are not fully, we don't have everything needed. So we count in other countries, in other continents as well. So there's everything we do, we try to look also on the neighbor, what they do, how can we improve ourselves. We benchmark ourselves all the time with other countries. And our goal is not just Equatorial Guinea. Yes, we want to create a job and opportunity for Equatorial Guineans, but also we want to extend that to the entire Africa.
Okay. Joseph, maybe if you could help around the same issue. Is African content possible? A focus on African content, and would it be better than a local content or national content?
The short answer is yes, it's possible, but I'm going to kind of qualify that.
Why?
Okay. See, here's what's going to happen. Now, every country, I like the analogy that you brought up.
Everybody is selfish.
Yeah, you become self-sufficient before you go and help the others. That's what he's saying, which is perfect. But if you're looking at a region or as a continent as a whole, everyone has the same set of skills. Yeah. Same set of skills. Say, I think everyone is kind of having 5 different skills, and everyone is extremely good at it. If you go the national route, there's going to be competition to what, and none of them are going to kind of come up, right? Because everyone has the same set of skills. Now, if you're looking at a regional or a continental level, and if there are a few set of skills that are good in certain areas, certain regions, certain countries, and if you can kind of exploit as in kind of get them to the highest possible level, and if there are different ones there, and if there is a diversity that you kind of build, then I believe then the continental level or the not just the national, but I'm talking of continental level, that will really kind of help. But to identify what is it that they are good at, some investment needs to be made, okay? So you can't just kind of pick and say, you know what, I'm going to kind of make the decision of my own. No, you need to see where these guys are. Just to give you an example, I'm just going to throw this because I originally come from India. And in India, there are certain regions that do the programming very, very well. Okay? So those folks in programming can either go into computer science and do things, and there are some guys that are extremely good when it comes to working with the tools and hands and things like that. Once again, I'm not trying to kind of generalize and say this. You need to be very specific about what people do and where they hail from, and if there are specifics, yes, then you kind of go ahead and train them in those locations and with those skills, and make sure they are the best at what they do. Now, if you can have 3 or 4 things for every country like that, and now you're talking about it on a global level, then it becomes very, very useful to kind of go as one continent.
So
until you get to that state,
yes.
it's going to be
so
a little tough.
basically, the issue of comparative advantage.
That's
so
exactly
who has
what
a
we want.
comparative advantage in
That's
this
specific.
kind of skill set?
Yes.
So if the Nigerians have it,
Correct.
let's allow Nigeria to improve that
Those
one,
areas,
and we
yes.
export them around the continent. If there is a skill set Equatorial Guinea has
Yes.
that can be harnessed, then we all
Must
benefit
do it.
from that. So that's Joseph's. Let me come to Mónica. So we're still thinking about how to identify what he just said. What are your thoughts? How difficult is that going to be? And we are thinking Africa.
So-
I just don't want to focus only on Ghana. I'm thinking Africa.
Right.
How do I identify?
So I think it really, it depends the skills that you want to teach, if you want to teach it at a national or regional level. For example, if you're teaching like a technical level where you require very expensive equipment, like drilling simulators, you need distillation towers, you need fracking, you need rigs, then you want to keep it build this institution that it's not in every single country because it's very costly for everybody to build.
Yeah.
If you really want to have a good institute with the right equipment, it costs a lot of millions. Like in Canada, we're very fortunate because industry spends a lot of money to give to the institutions. So we have the top-of-the-art facilities, but it's because it's been donated by industry.
Yeah.
And the advantage to how they do it down there is that industry gives the equipment, and then you get trained on their equipment, and of course they want to hire you, and then you're able to work right away. So that's the advantage, and that's why I go back to it's very critical to have industry at the table, working with the institutions. But equipment is really expensive. And then once you have at the national level, you also have to think about the social impact of these students or trainees that have to leave home. They have to leave their families. So there's a lot of different things that you need to look at, depending on what you want to teach.
Okay, so we have about 22 minutes, so I'll come around my panel and ask this particular question, which I want all of you to attempt. Maybe I'll start with you, Jacinto, and then I'll go around the table. So what can be the most impactful strategy to maximize local content in Africa's oil and gas industry? I want you to just pick one and focus on that. What do we need to focus on? The most impactful. We know there are so many different strategies. In your opinion, what would be if we were to pick one, what would be the best strategy for us to achieve local content objectives?
Again,
2 minutes. If you
like to give me tough questions.
Yes, maybe.
Well, I think what should be done is we need to stop thinking local content as something that is mandate.
Okay.
We need to start thinking local content as something that is good mutually between the companies and the host country. Okay. Because the other thing we need to do is the mentality. It need to change the way we see local content. It's not something that is mandated. We need to embrace that. The companies, they need to embrace that and see that as an investment, okay, and as also as legacy that they want to leave behind. Otherwise, this will not work. If we are the policy maker, they just come and say, well, you must do this, you must do this. It's not going to work. We have to talk to the producer and let them know the advantage that this has, and sell that as this is an investment that you're making. Because if you are hiring a local, you give him a salary. You are not only feeding one person. In my country, you say if you give one person a job, you're feeding the entire village. Okay. So this is the way this is supposed to be seen. Is that
another proverb from Equatorial Guinea? That's just right. Okay. So, okay, let me go to Kwaku. Jacinto has, from an equatorial point of view, you give a job to one person and you're feeding 10 or more. What, in your mind, from a Ghanaian perspective, is the best strategy to achieve local content objectives? Just one, and then you have 2 minutes to deal with that. I think, Kwaku, I think is your mic off?
This minute is over.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you,
Yeah. Yes. I think in brief, the best strategy, one, is to build in-country capacity at the enterprise level by developing your small and medium enterprises in specific areas that the country can have competitive advantage. And two, to build the capacity of your local workforce in key technical areas to make sure that you fill those positions with your local people. And lastly, enforcement. I think that local content cannot be achieved on its own. If you want the companies to, at their own pace to achieve local content, it will take you so many years to achieve little. But you need to enforce the law. And enforcing the law, to the extent that you not be prescriptive, you also need to, based on the national trade and industrial policy, you should direct the companies to achieve local content in areas that maximize the aspiration of the country and the people of the country. Otherwise, if you leave for the country on their own to administer your local content policy, to achieve the desired results. The enforcement of the local content targets is very important.
Okay, so Kwaku used the word enforcement about 3-4 times, and you should understand that he's a regulator. So he's a regulator, so enforcement is key for him. Mammadou, if you want to pick on, maybe follow up from Kwaku's end, but leave out a lot of the enforcement bit.
No, I won't talk about enforcement. I will go beyond.
Yeah, okay.
Then I will have an economical perspective. Because when we talk about local content, it's because of the model of the contracts. It's because in the profit sharing contract that we all have, is the resources that pays the investment made by the IOCs. And if you see, more than 80% of the investments leave the country. That's why people are talking about local content. If the goods and the service that goes to the investment of those equipment that will put out the oil, we wouldn't sitting here or making policy for local content. The local content aim to try to capture a certain value. So I prefer that we talk about creating value. Go beyond local content. That's why in our operation in Senegal, we try to look at the value that the local content will create. But the thing is, in Canada or in Norway, they have an ecosystem of a lot of enterprises in different areas that create those equipment. So that means that the country capture the value. So, and if you see the people in Africa, why they are so radical when it's about the resources, they see that the resources are extracted and they don't gain anything about it. So the thing is, we have to go beyond local content, talking about creating value, look at the competitive advantage of the countries. For example, I think Nigeria can have their yard to build up FPSO. We have Ghana that have their competitive advantage, I'm sure Equatorial Guinea. And Senegal, we have to starting to do the transformation. Because if you don't have a steel industry, you will not able to create those values. You have to go beyond the extraction, and so you can build up a virtual circle. If not, in 50 years, we'll be here sitting talking about local content. So we must go beyond talking about creating value.
So what I get from Mammadou is basically that instead of focusing on local content, you're looking at creating value along the chain and how you can position local companies to then we will not be thinking local content because we're already benefiting from the process. So maybe Joseph, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Mammadou talked about, create certain sects being, he's talking about ecosystems have already been created,
Yes.
right? And when they first started, they all were in the same boat as what we're talking about right now. So creating those or getting to an ecosystem that works well, Canada, Norway, examples given here, are not easy to get to.
Yeah, that takes time.
That takes time. But one of the things that we need to do when you asked is what is it that would really be effective when it comes to this? Anything that gets measured, I'm a firm believer of this, anything that gets measured gets done. So in order for us to kind of see what the value is that we want to get, if we can put in metrics for those specific things and then start measuring it based on, hey, implementing this, what is it kind of given? And making tweaks along the way to kind of ensure the value is brought about. If we can get those metrics put in, that would be something that I would advocate.
Yeah, but the challenge is with these metrics is that if you're a new country and you are starting,
correct,
you probably don't even know what the metrics should be.
So what needs to happen there is, no, it's a good point.
Yes.
If you know what are the developments that you're going to make, what are the projects that are going to come about, have someone who's knowledgeable. This is where I think the unconscious incompetence and the aspect comes in. Have them do an analysis and say, what are the kinds of things that you need, or what are the kinds of resources you need? Once you know what they are, now start looking for how to kind of get them in place. How can you get the training put in place so that it can be measured and can be effective?
Okay. Mónica, so maybe you link it, local content, to how do we link it to the other sectors of the economy? Instead of focusing on local content. So what are strategies to link the oil and gas sector to the other sectors of the economy to increase value? Maybe you want to finally pick on that, or is that one too difficult?
No, you know what? I'm a big promoter of education.
Okay.
I think education is the engine of the economy. So I think by creating funds through IOCs, where you create specific funds that are created for human capital development, that's really where you're going to get the opportunities for individuals to learn new skills. And then by learning new skills, these individuals are going to be able to generate the economic growth. So I really think it goes back to education, having funds where people are able to get trained, and then they're able to go and provide for the economy.
Thank you very much. Maybe now your final comments, starting with Kwaku. If you can do 30 seconds to 1 minute, I'll be grateful. Kwaku, your final comments, local content, what is the future?
Kwame here. The future of local content depends on the future of oil and gas industry. With energy transition and the climate activism, where pressure is being put on the upstream oil and gas companies, and the investment in fossil fuels is expected to decline over the years, though the pace might not be as fast as some analysts projected. The countries such as Ghana and other emerging oil and gas producing countries will be competing for limited investment in oil and gas industry. And therefore, local content will be one of the bargaining chips by the IOCs and investors, where pressure will be put on African countries to minimize local content, fiscal expectations, among others, in return for high level of investment. So I think that what you should focus, given the challenges of energy transition and the limited investment in the sector, is to focus on building local capacity by developing the local enterprises, enhance ability of your local firms to participate in the global supply chain of oil and gas industry, and through technology and innovation, which is expected to underline the oil and gas industry in view of the energy transition. We need to enhance the capability of local workforce to be able to operate in the oil and gas industry. And finally, as you mentioned it, we need to establish the synergy between the oil and gas industry and the rest of the economy to to avoid the oil and gas company being an enclave economy. And therefore, the countries such as Ghana need trade and industry policy in view of the challenges facing oil and gas industry to make sure that the local content in oil and gas industry is linked to the rest of the economy, such as mining, manufacturing, construction.
Okay.
To make the local content more meaningful for the country.
Thank you very much, Kwaku. Let me come to you, Jacinto. Maybe if you just 1 minute of your final thoughts on the subject, the future.
I think the local content feature is bright, is good, and local content is taking a very important step in the oil and gas. Just remember, 10 years ago, conferences like this, local content wasn't on the table. But you see, in those days, every conference that you go, local content is very serious topic to discuss. And that's telling me that the future is there for local content. And based on the just 2 years ago, 3 years ago, my grandmother just got electricity back home in our village. And I don't think she would like to go back living without this electricity.
The darkness. Yeah.
So this tells me that the oil and gas industry will still be here 50 years or 40 years from now. Okay. Well, in terms of what should be done and to ensure that whatever has started right now, that the industry, the actors are considering local content as a priority, that we keep that momentum and then we keep that growing. So we need to focus on education, in training. We also need to not only train people, we also need to ensure that after the training, they have jobs. Okay. So the only way we can do that is by drilling, moving the engine of the oil and gas. Also, we all one day we had our first day at work. So we need to, we weren't as good as we are today. So we need to know that when a young man finishes the university, we need to give him an opportunity to shine. Okay. We need to give him the opportunity to fail. And we need to give him the opportunity to learn. What I have seen most of the time from the producers company.
Jacinto, I gave you only 1 minute.
Okay, I'm done then.
Go ahead. Just
so what I have seen is that some of the time they lack passion. Okay. They say, okay, they want a professional with 10 years. Okay. It has to start now, and this doesn't give the opportunity for a young one to come, which they are the future. Okay. So keep doing whatever we're doing right now. Keep making the local content as a very important topic in the oil and gas. And then this concept will be, the future is good then.
Okay, so Mónica, I'll give you 30 seconds, then you can take 1 minute.
I took your time. So.
He took my time. No, I also agree with Jacinto. I think that local content has become very important. And in a training perspective, it is very critical to, like I said, work with industry to identify the skills that are required so that when you're delivering a program, the individuals taking the programs are learning the skills that are required. You do not want to create a program and then they cannot go and work, because at the end of the day, then that defeats the purpose. So it's very important.
Okay. Thank you very much. Joseph?
Yeah, continuing with what Mónica is saying, I think local content has to be very strategic in nature. And with the energy transition that we're experiencing, I'm being very technology agnostic here or industry agnostic. When I say that needs to be looked at 3, 5, 10 years from now, what is it that's required? And the definition of what local content needs to be expanded over the horizon so that whatever you provide now kind of caters to 5, 10, 15 years from now. Okay. And for the present.
Mammadou, I gave you the last words because I'm a Liverpool fan. Sadio Mane.
He should only get 10 seconds.
Yeah, so
10
you
seconds.
can take 10 seconds extra.
Okay.
I give you 10 seconds.
Thank you. All of you. One, I think I will start to say that the future will still lie on our capabilities investing in the education.
Yes, sir.
It's very key. It's education, and the extra step will be creating value in countries. It's very important. Creating value in countries, meaning transformation and industrialization. For me, the local content means creating value in country, industrialization, transformation. For example, if you see the bauxite from Guinea, when they, the cost of the ton at the port of Conakry will be around $30, and you take that, you transport it to the AUE, Emirates. They transform it in aluminum. They refine it. It costs in the international market $400 around. Now, when you transform it to aluminium, it's $2,700. Talking about local content, in the $30, it doesn't make any sense. We have to reduce the poverty in Africa. Like they say, make poverty energy history, but it must be broader. It's poverty in general history. You cannot do it by narrowing your ambition for the $30. You have to capture the difference between $2,700 to the $0. That's what, for me, is local content. Creating in-country
Value.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My panel, Mr. Kwaku Boateng, Director of Local Content at Ghana's Upstream Petroleum Regulator, the Petroleum Commission. Mammadou Kane, is it Kane? It's Kane. Kane. Yeah. You see the
Okay.
You want me to, is this not English?
You can find it.
Harry Kane.
Out in London, yes. Last week I found a shop. Joshua Kane.
Okay. So that is for your family. That's fine. Jacinto Nguema Owono is the Director of National Content at the Ministry of Mines and Hydrocarbons at Equatorial Guinea. Joseph Mahendran is the Associate Vice President and Regional Director, Sub-Saharan Africa of Black & Veatch, a global engineering, procurement, and construction leader, and Dr. Mónica M. Bennett. Is it? The M is for?
Melissa.
Okay. Senior International Client Development Manager of the International Corporate Trading and Client Development at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, Calgary, Canada. Let me just leave you with this. It's been said that whoever defines a concept controls the narrative around it. So, for example, currently the world is discussing what the greatest challenge to humanity is, and says is environment. So once whoever defines what the challenge is, then controls the narrative around. So if Africa is going to be part of that narrative, then we should be part of the definition of what the greatest challenge is. Otherwise, once the person defines it, they control the narrative, and they define what is the cause and what the solutions, and it then justifies any actions taken by them subsequently. So I'd like to thank my panel, and I also want to thank all of you for being very good guests and listening attentively. Unfortunately, I couldn't come to you for your questions. I'm Kwame Baah-Nuakoh. I'm General Manager Sustainability at Ghana's National Oil Company, and it's been nice having all of you. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Very well. Very well.
Very well.